Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to be baking up we have a ham baking in the oven. We're going to make some mac and cheese. We're going to cook up some acorn squash, make some homemade biscuits for our dinner tonight. So I've got a pot of water boiling. We're going to pour in some corkscrew macaroni. We're going to let those cook up. And then we're going to prep our acorn squash to go into the oven. This gives us a nice stir. And set this right over here. And so I have two big acorn squash. You got to peel off your stickers here. Here we go. And we're going to cut them in half. I always you can cut them in half this way, but I always prefer to cut them in half this way because they sit a little bit flatter on the baking sheet. So we're going to cut this one as well. And then let me grab a spoon. We got to scrape out the seeds of the acorn squash. So we're going to just scoop it around and then just get all of that out. So I've got that one scooped out. And we'll scoop this one. And then I'll dump them in just a second. I just want to get them all scooped out first. These are actually quite seedy acorn squash. I haven't had one this seedy in a while. But my 13-year-old son, he absolutely loves acorn squash. Although I think he really just likes the brown sugar on it. But he's always like, when are you going to make acorn squash again, Mom? There we go. So we're going to scrape these out until you have all of the seeds out. And then what we do is, it's really simple. Most of the work for acorn squash is done at the end. There's very little work done in the beginning other than cutting it open, de-seeding it. Then we're just going to put them face down on our baking dish. So just like this, and then we're going to go pop these in the oven so they can start cooking. I have my oven at 400 degrees because we're also going to be cooking our biscuits in there. But we're going to pop them in there and we're going to have them start cooking right away. Okay. Now let's prep our sourdough discard biscuits to go with our ham tonight. It's going to give my mac and cheese or our noodles just a little bit of stirring because I don't want any of them to stick to the bottom of the pot. Okay. For our biscuit, let's get my bowl. We're going to start out with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. So scoop this up. We've got 1 and 2. Then we're going to add in a tablespoon of baking powder. So I have my baking powder right here made out because I am out and I've got to get some more at the store. So I just made some baking powder using baking soda, cream of tartar, and cornstarch. And so it's the same thing. I just had to make it myself. And then we're going to add in about 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. Sorry, forgot my little utensil over here. So we're going to add about 1/4 of a teaspoon baking soda and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. We're getting these dry ingredients mixed up so that we can cut our butter into it. And there we go. And we're going to you want a stick of cold butter. So I've got to just grab these out of the fridge. You need them nice and firm and cold because you don't want your butter to get mushy because the colder it is when you cut it into it, it's going to lead to the nice flaky layers. So you need 1 stick of cold butter, which is the same as 1/2 cup. And I'm going to first start by cutting into little cubes. And then we're going to use our pastry cutter to cut it all the way in there. Now you could use a a food processor if you wanted to chop your butter into your flour. But I find that it works just fine using a pastry cutter. We're going to give this a quick stir. And then we're going to use our pastry cutter to chop the butter into it. So in case you don't know what a pastry cutter is, it looks like this. It's like the brass knuckles of baking. And you're just going to hold it and we're going to cut it into the butter. And it's like a bunch of little knives cutting the butter up into lots of pieces. And essentially you're going to do this until you have no chunks of butter larger than a pea. And these are going to be our sourdough discard biscuits, which we'll be having with our ham, some homemade mac and cheese, our roasted acorn squash, and some cheesy broccoli for dinner tonight. So let's get these cut up. We kind of had a busy day today. So this morning, my kids were playing outside with the neighbors, and then they got water out. They started out with like a water gun fight, and then they got the hose, and then they made a big mud slosh pit. So they were very active. And then we decided to go over to my parents' house to swim because it was like 80 degrees here. So we're had a lot of energy out today. Okay. Now that we have it pretty close. Okay. Just going to go through. Sometimes you get a little bit of butter stuck in your. I'm just going to cut it out, and I'm going to do a couple more cuts, and then we're going to add in our cream and our discard. So just cut these little last chunks up. And there we go. And so again, you don't want to have any pieces bigger than a pea, because then what happens is then you get like a big butter pocket in your biscuit, which isn't the worst thing, but it can just make it to where you don't have quite as nice of a texture. And we want to have these nice, lovely, flaky layers. Let me grab a small bowl over here. And we are going to add in a cup of sourdough discard and a half a cup of half and half. Apparently I forgot all my measuring utensils today. Got this. Okay, so here's my sourdough discard. We're going to use a cup of sourdough discard. There we go. I'm going to mix it in the bowl because I do like to make sure I have them mixed up well before going into our biscuits. And then we're going to do a half a cup of half and half. There we go. And then we are just going to mix this up until it is all mixed together. That way when we mix it into our biscuits, it will mix in evenly. Okay, giving it a good stir here. Perfect. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we are going to pour our wet ingredients into our dry. I'm going to pour it right in the middle, and then we're going to kind of mix them together ever so gently. But most of them, what we're going to do is we're going to dump it out on our countertop, and we're going to do some press and folds to get those flaky layers. But you do want to do a little bit of a mix first. There we go. And it's going to give you a bit of a dry shag for your dough. There we go. So you see how our dough is very dry and shaggy right now? That is what you want, because you don't want it to come together. These aren't drop biscuits. These are going to be the flaky, delicious, full of layers biscuits. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our whole dry shag. We're going to dump it out here. And now you're not going to knead it. You're going to do press, and then you're going to fold the dough on top of each other. So press and fold. Every press and fold into your dough is giving you a new flaky layer in your biscuit. So it's really important not to knead. You got to do the press and folds. There we go. And good. And now we're just going to press it out. Do a couple more right on the edges. And then I'm going to press it out to about 1 inch thickness. So again, making sure you don't knead, because kneading it is going to give you a stiff biscuit versus a fluffy one. So let me grab my parchment paper here and my baking sheet. We're going to cover our baking sheet with parchment paper. This is just for a nicer bake. Your biscuits won't stick to your baking sheet. I love using parchment paper when I bake. It just works so well. And now we're going to start with our little biscuits. We're just going to cut out using circles, or you could use whatever really shape you want, but circles are the easiest. Now at the end, what we're going to do is we're going to cut out as much as we can out of this, and then you're going to have what I always call the Frankenstein biscuits, where we're going to press and fold them back together, but they never quite look the same. So these last ones, they'll taste the same, but they're not going to look the same. So we're going to do a couple more press and folds, but what they do is, because they're kind of mushed together, they kind of pop up in funny little ways. So they're called my Frankensteins. They just don't look quite as pretty. So we've got another set, but you don't want your delicious biscuits to go to waste. Let's see. We got one, and then I think we're going to have one itty bitty. So we'll try to do a press and a fold, and see if we can't make this one into little itty bitty baby. Nice and cute. Perfect. So we've got our little biscuits here. I'm going to clean up this mess a little bit, but we're going to brush them with a little bit of half and half. That's going to give them a nice kind of golden color on when you bake them. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. Okay. Here we go. Let me grab a small bowl. And you can use cream or milk. I'm using half and half because that's what we used in our biscuit. So, but you want to brush them. You could also do an egg wash if you want. That will give you a shinier top to your biscuit. You need just about a tablespoon. You don't need much. And then we're just going to brush with our half and half, just the very tips of them. And again, this is going to give it a nice, rich color. And if you like a little bit of if you're going to have your biscuits for jam, you could sprinkle a little bit of sugar on the top, and it'll give them a nice little sweet touch. But we're going to use the biscuits. I'm sure some of my kids will have them with jam, but they can also have them with the ham. Little like ham biscuits. Oh, delicious. See, in the South, it's really traditional for you to have a Southern ham, which is different than like the Christmas ham. It's a salt dried ham. It's very salty, so you have to soak it for like 2 days before you cook it up. And it's kind of like, it looks like more like shredded meat when you're done with it. But you take that salty ham and you put it in biscuits, and they're really salty, but they're delicious. Okay, we've got our cream all on the top. Let's go pop these in our oven at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. And again, we're going to have our beautiful ones, and then we're going to have our Frankenstein ones. When you pull them out, you'll know exactly which ones are the Frankenstein, because that mashing together just never leads to a really pretty one. Let's get I like to do my biscuits on the top because that's what is going to have that nice, you know, baked goods. You always want them on the top rack because the bottom rack just doesn't cook as well.
I mean, for what it's worth, Frankenstein was normal.
Okay, Frankenstein's monster. My husband likes to point out Frankenstein was the doctor. His monster is not Frankenstein. It's a common misconception. We're just playing with semantics here now. But yes, so Frankenstein was normal. His monster was not. So these are his monster.
Technically correct is the best form of correct.
Okay, well, this my husband likes you guys to point out he likes technically correct. And they wonder why so many marriages end in divorce. Okay, let me check on our noodles here. I'm going to pull one out and I'm going to test it. They should be pretty close. These noodles take about 10 to 13 minutes. Perfect. Nice al dente. So we're going to drain these. And here. And we're just doing a small batch of mac and cheese. And then I'm going to put them here in my little Dutch oven because we're going to pop this in the oven too. Let's put a little bit of butter in here. And here we go. So we've got a half a stick. We're going to let that melt up. I'm going to put my temperature on really, really low. And we're going to add in some cream. Not half and half. You got to use cream. Cream is what's just going to give you that really rich flavor. So there's just a teeny bit in this one. So we're on about maybe a half a cup of cream. You want a good amount of cream in here because it's going to mix with the cheese when we add the cheese in. And you need it to be enough liquid in there so that your cheese gets creamy. So we're going to let that butter melt and then the cream to warm up. We're going to add about, I want to say, 1.5 teaspoons of garlic salt. If you don't like garlic salt, you could use regular salt, but I love myself some garlic salt. And then about 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Now, if you don't mind mustard, you could put ground mustard seed in here or even some of the whole mustard seeds. I'd put about a teaspoon in there. We're not a big fan of mustard here, so we don't put it in it, but that is very common found in mac and cheese. So we're going to give this a nice little stir. And while that is going, we're going to heat up and make our garlic butter for our broccoli. So we're going to use the last little bit of this butter. I'm going to turn on my back burner, nice and low. We're going to start that to melt, and then we're going to add a little bit of garlic in there. Okay, let's get this going here. And we've had our ham cooking in the oven now for about an hour and 20 minutes at about 275. With hams, they are pre-cooked, so you really just want to bring it up to a nice hot temperature until you do the glaze. Then we're going to bring it up to 425 in just a second. So I will start my oven. I have a bacon over here, and we're going to bring it up to 425. We'll take it out in just a second, but I'm going to make my glaze for the ham, which really is not me doing anything. I'm expertly pouring it into a pot and adding some water. Really difficult, guys. And then we just need about a 1/4 cup of water. A little shy. It's 3 tablespoons, so just shy of a 1/4 cup. And we're going to boil this until it's kind of like a thick kind of glaze, a candy glaze that we're going to then put over our ham. And this is going to give you that nice kind of sweet, delicious flavor to the ham. It's funny, growing up, never had ham. My mom was from Sweden, and so we ate a lot of Swedish foods or have that. So at Christmas, we never had a ham, and we always had a turkey at Thanksgiving. So I didn't have my first like American ham until I was married, and then my husband asked me to make it one year. And so it's kind of like a new thing. We just never had it. And we would have a Swedish ham, but a Swedish ham tastes nothing like the traditional American ham. It tastes more like a pork chop. And it is in a mustard crust, but the meat isn't even like ham. It is more like a pork chop. It's like what I say. It's different. It's delicious, but you know, it's weird how like just how ham from different countries is so just like their view on it is different. Okay, we're gonna add a little bit of garlic to our butter now that it's starting to melt. Get my garlic. We're gonna add about, I wanna say, 2 teaspoons maybe. I'm gonna give it a good shake, there we go. And we're gonna just let it warm up on low. You want it to be on low because you don't wanna crisp up the garlic too much, but you want it to infuse in the butter, which we're gonna then pour over our broccoli and roast in the oven. Okay, let's get, our butter is nice and melted here. So I'm gonna turn up my front burner just a bit. Here we go. And then we're gonna add in some cheese. We're gonna add it in slowly. We're just using cheddar cheese today. But really you can do any cheese that you like in there. But cheddar cheese is one of our family's favorites. So I'm gonna start by adding in about 2 big handfuls, which is about 1.5 cups of cheddar cheese to begin with. And this is to make the creamy base. We'll also do a cheesy coating on it, but we're gonna melt it up first and go from there. Here we go. We're gonna let it things. Best to use is to get your own cheese and shred it because prepackaged cheese has an anti-caking agent on it. But today is reality and we just had shredded cheese, so that's what we're gonna use. You just need to cook it a little bit longer. But I will say the best mac and cheese comes out when you can grate it yourself fresh. And that is simply because, you know, and they do it so that when they package their cheese and it comes in transit, it doesn't melt together. But if you look at it, it has like a fine white powder on it that it's kind of like cornstarch. And so they just do that so it doesn't melt together. So for the best results, grate your own cheese. I normally do, but today we were just kind of a crazy day. You know how holidays are. You know, you gotta, as a mother, you always try to make everything like the magic come apart. So just lots of planning and going there and making sure they have fun doing fun stuff. Okay. Well, let me get a little spoon for that. Okay. I did not set my timer for the biscuits, did I? So that was, let me go check on them real quick. Peep on there. They should, I think I have a minute or 2 left. Yeah, not done yet. About 5 minutes. This is what happens if I don't remember to set the timer. I forget about it. Very important. Timers are important. Okay. See our mac and cheese? The cheese is melting up lovely now. See, we're getting it together nice and stringy. That's why you want to have a lot of cream in there to start with, because you want it to be nice and like, if you don't have enough cream in there, what you get is a thicker, stringier mac and cheese. But if you want a nice creamy one, just add a little bit more cream in it to melt it together. It also prevents it from becoming too firm if you're going to reheat it for like leftovers. Okay. Look at this. Nice. You can start to see all that good creamy cheese on there. Perfect. We're going to get this ready so we can pop this in the oven when we take out those biscuits. So I'm going to turn off my burner here. And now we're just going to do a nice layer of shredded cheese on the top. This is going to give you that cheesy crust on your mac and cheese. And you just want to make sure you just cover it all up. That's why I like to do it in a Dutch oven, because you can do it on the stove and then you can pop it right in the oven right there. So you're only using one container. Okay. Get this. It's add a little bit of garlic salt in here. Give it a stir, and we're going to coat up our broccoli with this, and we're going to put it in the oven when we put our mac and cheese in. So I've got about a half a bag of broccoli. I'm going to throw this in here. I'm going to just take a couple of these pieces. Sometimes you get like a huge broccoli tree. It's a no bueno. You don't want that in there. So just kind of cut off that part just because you're not going to eat it that big. Here we go. So we got some more manageable sizes here. And then what I'm going to do is you're going to put it all together really close. And we're going to take our garlicky butter here and we're going to drizzle it over our broccoli. Just like this. And it's going to be absolutely delicious. So we've got this. And now we're just going to kind of toss it in here. And then we're going to go get our biscuits out. And we'll put these in the oven while we do that so they can cook up. And we just got to dress up our ham. Okay. I think we turn that off.
What's your favorite cuisine to eat?
Well, it's a hard one. I feel like I go through things. Now I do if I'm going out to eat, I really, really love like Indian or Ethiopian because nobody in my family really likes that. So I typically always like to go out there if I'm going out with friends and whatnot. But I do love Italian. I don't know. I just love food. So it's hard to say. Let's look at these biscuits. Nice golden flaky layers. Look how beautiful they are. Okay. Now we're going to pop this broccoli in right down here. I'm going to check on my acorn squash. They're getting there. We're going to slide these over here, but these are our sourdough biscuits. But do you see how, when you come over here, you'll see these are my Frankenstein ones here. They don't look as beautiful, but just look at these lovely flaky layers, how they just pop on there. Just gorgeous. And this is made of our sourdough discard and a stick of butter, and we cut it all in there and do our press and folds. I'm going to pop this in the oven, and then I'll be right back. We want to get our nice melted layer on it. Okay. Now I'm going to pull my ham out of this oven that I have cooking up because we've got to do our brown sugar glaze on it. So when you do the preheating of the ham, you do it in aluminum foil to trap in that natural moisture. You can see the steam coming out from it because you don't want to overheat your ham. Now, let me grab my tongs.
You have a question? Does the Easter Bunny come to our house for the kids?
It does, yes. Even for my oldest ones, I will say I got an Easter basket when I was in college still. So we do a lot. My husband says I'm a little bit crazy with holidays, but I go all out. Okay, a lot crazy. I go all out for all holidays. So yes, they all have an Easter basket. We'll do Easter egg hunts. We'll have our Easter brunch and everything like that. But I do go all out. I mean, for St. Patrick's Day, they get little green cauldrons filled with toys. I mean, every hot Valentine's, they get these big plastic Valentine's hearts filled with candy and toys. We go all out. I have specialty blankets that they have when they come out. So we do everything. Like you can see over there, we've got our Easter Tomten, everything. I love holidays. My parents, my mom always went big for holidays, made every little one. She always made it really magical for us as kids. And I try to do that because, you think about it, you have your kids for 18 years at home. That's 18 years of magic that you get with them. And I just don't want them to grow up. So yes, they do, and they all look forward to it. I do make things a little bit more, age appropriate for the older ones. Their golden egg has money in it versus a prize. So they do the Easter egg hunts too, because they know that there's money in the eggs. So it's a good way to just keep them young for a little bit longer. They'll have plenty of time to grow up later. And hopefully, I have fond memories of my childhood and all the great stuff my mom did. And so I hope my kids have that as well. Okay, so now we are just getting our brown sugar delicious glaze. I'm making sure to get it between every little layer here, because that is where you're going to get all of your flavor in. And then we're going to drizzle some over the top. You can't just pour it over the top. You want to really try to get in those layers. Otherwise, all you have is this brown sugar cinnamon glaze on the outside. And this is where the deliciousness happens. Okay, and then what we do is we pop this back in the oven with it on for about 5-10 more minutes, and it kind of like crunches up and makes the deliciousness. So I'm going to slide this right back in, and we'll prep our strawberries for our dinner tonight. Then we're going to take out our acorn squash and we'll finish them off, and dinner should be ready here in about a few minutes. So my oldest daughter, she was like, can we have strawberries? We've had so much pineapple and melons, and strawberries are her favorite. So I said, yes, we can have strawberries tonight. And she's one of my ones who's more picky with the fruit. She likes strawberries, pineapple and watermelon and pears. Those are like the fruits she likes. And so, it's funny how each kid has different preferences for the fruit. Like, Evie doesn't like melons. Teddy eats it all. Jack eats it all. But it's funny how as they get older, like I remember when Lena was younger, she would eat buckets of blueberries. Now she won't touch a blueberry. And, I personally don't like raspberries or blackberries or blueberries, but I made sure to make sure my kids always have them, because I don't want them to not like them, because they're so good for you. I am actually, surprise, surprise, I am not a huge fruit person. I prefer veggies. I'd take a salad over a fruit salad any day. I'm just not a huge fan of fruit. And the fruit I do like is some of the stranger ones. I love grapefruit. If they're really tart grapefruit, I love pears, and then I love melons, but mainly being like honeydew and cantaloupe. Watermelon in there, and then pineapple. Those are pretty much the only fruits I like. But the berries and strawberries, if you can get me in a right mood, I'll eat them. But I'm not a huge, and these are typically what everybody else loves. I do like kiwis, but kiwis are a pain to cut up. Okay, we got our first batch. We'll go down here. I'll say my kids, when we do strawberries, they typically eat 2 pounds at a time. So when I say we eat a lot of fruit in this house, we do. And it goes through fast. So it's always like I'm always cutting up a whole thing. I got this huge hammy melon and a pineapple. They should be ripe in a day or two. But I say we go through a ridiculous amount of fresh fruit in this house, just because, the way I'm not a short order cook. So I make one meal for the whole family. They eat it, but I make sure that there is stuff at every meal that every kid will like. So it might be that if they don't like mine things, they have the fruit and the bread or something like that, so that they're always full, and they have it. And I feel like that helps with complaining, because you can't make everyone happy. There are very few meals in this house that every kid likes. And I never understood how my mom always got so annoyed when one of us would complain about dinner growing up. And I'm the youngest of 10. So you just imagine you can't please 10 people. But now that I have 5 kids, there's always somebody grumbling, oh, I don't like this. But I'm like, but I picked your fruit that you liked. So hopefully, you'll have a full belly at the end. It might not have been your favorite meal, but you've got a full belly. Okay, we've got our strawberries. Can't wait until it's peak strawberry time and we get the really good ones that are nice and red inside versus.
Yeah.
Good.
You have a question? Did everyone like the pizza yesterday?
Yes, everyone loved the pizza, and then we actually had Jack had it again for lunch today. He loves pizza, but no, we had it like went through it pretty much fast. And then I sent over when we went over to my parents' house. I brought them the last little like pieces of it for them to have for lunch. But yes, it was a big hit. The kids just pizzas. That's one of the things everyone likes, except Torn. Torn does not like pizza. He's crazy. We're just going to sprinkle a little bit of sugar on here just to help bring out their natural sweetness. About a teaspoon. A little goes a long way, but it makes them taste so much better as if they're like in full season. And let's go. We're going to go grab the acorn squash out of the oven. And we're going to be down to the last little prep on everything. So, get all of this. Get my acorn squash. We can see how the broccoli and the mac and cheese are cooking up. Nice. The broccoli is getting there. It's vibrant. We're getting a nice little crust melted on there. So that should be nice and bubbly in just a second. Okay. So here are our acorn squash. I'm going to grab my brown sugar, and then I'm going to show you how we prep our acorn squash. It's super simple, but delicious. And this is what Torn loves. So Torn, he's not a big ham fan, but he loves mac and cheese, strawberries, and acorn squash. So we're going to flip them over. When you cook them down, it keeps this natural steam inside, so it makes them nice and tender and juicy inside. And then, did I use up my butter? Got it right. Got another one right over here. We put just a little bit of butter in each one. So, like a little pat of butter, and it's going to melt up with the natural steam in there. I will say, when my babies were little, I used to always make their baby food homemade, and acorn squash was one of their favorites. And then we're going to put a little bit of brown sugar in each one. So you just sprinkle it around. There we go. Perfect. So, and then to get you that like savory and sweet, you sprinkle it with just a pinch of salt. Not much, but it gives you that like umami flavor. It's just a little bit. Perfect.
You have comments. Someone made your Easter bread today. Said it turned out great.
Oh, good. I'm glad. It's a fun bread to make. It's so pretty. I feel like it's one of those things that it's like a showpiece, but it tastes delicious. You know, a lot of times you can bake something that is pretty, but it doesn't taste great. It's one that is actually like delicious and pretty at the same time. I know ours is, we ate it all up in like a day or two, and I will say the kids had the most fun like grabbing the eggs out and then peeling them because they love hard-boiled eggs, so they had a lot of fun with that. Okay, let's go and grab I'm going to grab the rest of the stuff out of the oven and pull up the ham out, and we're going to be ready for dinner. Okay. So we've got our broccoli. And you see how it turns a nice vibrant green? That's when you know it's ready. We've got our delicious cheddar cheese, mac and cheese. All the cheese is melted deliciously on the top. And see if we can make a little bit of room here. Put the broccoli right here. And then we're going to pull out our ham. And I have my oven now at 3, and it's going to be delicious. Oh, look at this delicious Easter ham. I don't know why I said Christmas ham. I guess because we do make it at Christmas time. Okay, let me show you how we're gonna plate it up real quick. Now I will tell you a little trick with the ham. When you're cutting it, don't cut it all off at the same time, because nobody's gonna eat this much ham. But you save a little bit for later, and if you keep it together, it doesn't dry out. So only cut off what you're gonna use, and then keep the rest on there so it stays nice and juicy and tender. So I'm gonna grab down here because I'm gonna take some ham from the bottom where it's nice and juicy. There we go. We're going to spread it out. So we have our delicious ham.
Do you have a question? Do you prefer style or Le Creuset?
You know what? This is my only Staub pot that I actually have, but it works great. They're actually about the same. My mom gave it to me for Christmas. It actually has a Christmas tree lid on it. So that's the only problem is I'm not a big fan of mixing holidays. So I don't ever use the lid when it's not year round because I'm like, I can't have a Christmas tree in the middle of summer. But I have a lot of Le Creuset and I absolutely love Le Creuset. So here is our garlic, broccoli, and then look at the gorgeous biscuit with all of the layers. So this is what we're having for dinner tonight. We're having a delicious Easter ham with an oven roasted acorn squash with brown sugar, butter, and a pinch of salt, our homemade sourdough discard biscuits, and our broccoli. And oh my goodness, what did I forget, guys? What did I forget? We forgot the mac and cheese. Look at this delicious mac and cheese. So let's make it over here. I was like, this plate looks bare. And of course, the gooey, delicious homemade mac and cheese to kind of top off dinner. Again, guys, we have this delicious meal. My kids are going to be so excited to eat. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day to show you what I'm cooking for my family and hopefully teach you guys something as well. I feel like we've lost the art of cooking in America. I think so many people are like, I can get in the freezer section or we can go out to eat, but you can make great meals at home for the fraction of a cost. And I think it's just a great skill to have. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us. Also, don't forget we upload our videos to the link on our page so you can always rewatch them if you want to. Thanks again.